Welcome to the NetCetera podcast. I'm your host, Blake Minho Kim. Join me as we focus on demystifying the innovations driving the new internet. All right. How you doing, Raf?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you.
Yeah, really excited to have you on the show. We've been chatting for a while.
Yeah.
You're now a NICEN member. Lots of fun stuff coming up. But as always, with every guest that we have on the show, we always love to start with origin stories. So we'd love for you to tell us about yourself, Refraction, and kind of how you got to where you are today here in 2024.
Sure. Yeah, and my origin story is really tied to refraction as well, right? In terms of,
Which we love. Yeah.
my start really was, my background is in culture. I'm from Montreal, very culture heavy city. I was in the music scene very heavily, writing a lot, DJing a lot, being in bands, everything that, Montrealers kind of do. Eventually, I kind of parlayed that into music journalism and writing. So my background is really in media. So I started as a music journalist, and because I was in Montreal at the right place at the right time, started working at Vice as a music columnist. So I wrote about electronic music for the print magazine back in the early 2000s. From there, that kind of turned into an over decade long career with Vice, both as a writer, then as an editor, then as a producer on the video. That transition from print media to digital video. I was there for that,
Yeah.
so became producing some of the videos. I was hosting some videos even, and then my last sort of 7 years at Vice was in and around as a head of creative for their agency side. So Vice has, an agency side within the magazine itself. So figuring out how to work with partnerships, figuring out how brands can plug into the Vice ecosystem. The name of the game was, and I guess it still is, this idea of authenticity. So really, figuring out how to navigate that world between brand partnerships and what was seen as this authentic voice within Vice. So fast forward my couple years, my time at Vice ended. I had been reporting a little bit about blockchain, kind of understanding it, but then my co-founder Malcolm Levy, who is both a digital artist and a curator, he curated, for example, the first digital exhibit for the Olympics back in Vancouver in 2010.
Epic.
Talking to me about DAOs, and it's like, hey, I'm good friends with Jesse from Seed Club. I want to start this thing called Refraction, which started as like essentially an online decentralized festival. I think there's something here that's really interesting. So to me, that really spoke to a few things. One was, the idea of, empowering artists, emerging artists, discovering and like sharing, which was something that I was really, closely tied to advice. That was my favorite part of it, was just like, who are the new musical acts? Who are the new kind of like, the new ways that we can uncover, discover, share, and like empower these artists to get more notoriety. And then the other piece of that was the ownership part, which I thought was really interesting because, as long as I worked for Vice, the ownership side on my end wasn't really there, right? So it's this idea of like how, as this creator economy, that we're contributing and continue to contribute to these sort of like, these sort of like media companies or what have you, these brands, but not see that sort of equity side of it. DAOs really spoke to me as something that could be a big solve for that, right? Both the empowering and the ownership side was really, really interesting. Plus he knew all the best digital artists already. He was like booking amazing arts because he was also founded this festival called New Forms Festival. So there was this shared kind of shared vision. And the third part of that is Greg Liebert, who's the third co-founder. His background is in digital communities. So he worked early on with Blast Radius, was working with Nike Air Jordan back in the day, an early community, right? So all three of us share this history of electronic music and love for parties. but also this grassroots artist movement, and this idea of like, okay, every artist movement has always started with not having a space for yourself and creating your own space, right? And so Refraction for us was creating that space for digital artists and music using new technology like the blockchain, etc.
Oh, there we go. I mean, that was beautiful right there, right? And it totally makes sense. Vice being one of the OG media publications. And I think that point on ownership really, hits home, right? Because
Yeah.
did create a lot of value. Presumably, it sounds like there wasn't as much that you got out of it as you should have. And now I think with things like Refraction and your co-founders, it's just this perfect blend of, being able to bring something like this to life. And obviously, we love DAOs here. So
Yeah.
always pro DAO.
Yeah, I'm sure you
Um,
guys saw the
yeah,
same thing in terms of ownership for
yeah,
yourselves, right? In the agency world, and
yeah.
my I dipped my toes into that agency world for those last 7 years, and understanding all the kind of like the hoops you need to jump through and the
Yep.
frustrations. That definitely spoke to me. That's when when you mentioned Myosin, found out about you guys. I was really excited to
Yeah.
join and contribute in different ways because the
And we're doing
vibe.
some cool
The vibe
stuff. Yeah. The
yeah,
vibes are there. Vibe
yeah,
check.
yeah,
Well, listen, I want to dive deeper, right? So we're talking about refraction.
yeah.
Tell me more. Like how we say it's a DAO. I think, something that's really important is DAO is such a broad term, right?
Yes.
So there's a whole spectrum of like how decentralized, how centralized, how you
Governance,
make,
treasury,
there's,
all that stuff.
yeah. So let's dive into that. I would love to understand, how does refraction work? And let's start there. Yeah, we can dive
Yeah,
deeper.
so essentially, refraction is a DAO. There is a refract token that's not liquid, but it
Hmm.
is, our representation of ownership, right? So essentially, refraction is a DAO made up of artists, musicians, producers, DJs, cultural operators, we want to call them. So people
Hmm.
who are either running venues or throwing festivals, owning music labels, etc. And from the DAO side, especially early on, there was a lot of talk about governance, et cetera, and how
Hmm.
important that is. And we've seen that experiment, you know, rise and fall,
Countless
change, and
times.
be
Yeah.
successful or not, right? And I think what we discovered, especially within our own community, is that governance from a directing the treasury and sort of business style decisions isn't something that our community really wanted. At least we've given
Hmm.
people opportunities to vote for things, and we've seen not a lot of great turnout for things that we thought people might want to step into. However, I think what that signaled to us was number one, that there's a lot of trust from our community
Hmm.
saying like, hey, you guys have, been there, done that. We trust your curation. We trust your operations. We trust all of that stuff. Don't really need to involve us in that sort of treasury style governance. Where it gets interesting is on the curation side. And we're
Hmm.
looking at new ways to involve the community to have more decentralized curation. Malcolm wrote a piece on how important decentralized curation is, to the future of, the cultural industry. And so it's really important for us to sort of give some of that curatorial power to the rest of the community, which I think is interesting. And it's also just more fun. It's just like, okay,
Yep.
let's say, for example, an example of that would be like, okay, let's get a leaderboard. Let's all vote who, which artists or which new pieces of art should get exhibited in the next,
Hmm.
refraction event at NFT NYC. Right. So that's like everybody wants to talk about how good their taste is and
Yeah.
show,
That's why they're all there.
and
It's very
yeah,
culturally driven. Yeah.
exactly, and support the artists that they love or help us discover new artists, etc. So, that's kind of where our governance, we're looking at that part of it is. In terms of the token and the future for that, that is something we're working on. That's in like super alpha stage right now, but that is essentially, we're looking at refraction as we're already kind of the center of this sort of Web3 cultural ecosystem,
Hmm.
and slowly moving outside of Web3 into sort of just general, culture itself, just by virtue of the curation that we have and the reach that we have and the partnership that we have. Um, so refraction, there's a huge opportunity for us being that center of that cultural ecosystem for an interesting token play in the future in terms of a cultural token, but I won't say more than that because
Can't
that
say too much. Can't give
can't say
away the
too much.
alpha.
Can't say too much,
Yeah.
but it's a tease into sort of what we're looking at into the future, amongst a lot of other really exciting projects. But yeah, that's it. We're an arts and culture
Hmm.
DAO, owned and operated by artists for artists, and yeah, essentially the mission there is to sort of like really think about how to reinvent or reimagine this cultural industry using all these new
Yeah.
technologies like the blockchain, right? Because I think everyone's tired of the gatekeepers. Everyone's, ask any artist, and I think you mentioned this in your
Hmm.
questions you sent over, how frustrating it is to be
Yeah.
an artist now and focus on your art when you also have to be a marketer, you have to be on social media, you have to be a video editor,
Hmm.
you got to do TikToks. It's like, where do you find time to be creative, right? So we're pretty bullish on new technologies helping that, and also just if you're going to put all that effort in, at least get more out of it through ownership.
Yes, 100%. And that actually kind of leads me to the next question, or like the next thought in my mind, which is, I think it's two things, which I think we haven't even talked about, like, well, number one, more like what you guys even do, right? So it's like
Right.
festivals, you guys put on
Yeah.
events. There's a lot of really cool stuff there. And then on top of that, and then we'd love for you to, tell us more. But also, I'm really curious about, the makeup of the community. And as people
Mhm.
come in, how are, do you find you're having to do a lot of education or convincing, or I guess by the very nature of being there, they're already kind of convinced? And of course, what's really unique about you guys is you do so many IRL things that there is this opportunity to kind of, bring more people in and help them understand, hey, like together, if we do this thing, this can actually be not the only solution, but a solution to,
Yeah.
the ownership challenges that I think, as you talked about, the creator economy, faces today. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you bring up a couple of really good points there. The first one is, you know, how do we activate? We have this mission, right? We know that we want to
Hmm.
change the world through, all these cultural endeavors. But how do we do that? So there's sort of four main things that we do, and I can talk a little
Hmm.
bit about experiences because to your point, that's like the big thing that we're known for, and it really is the the aha moment for a lot of people when they're moving into learning about
Yeah.
refraction and just into Web3 in general. But essentially, there are sort of four main buckets or verticals that we activate in. One is obviously the experiences. We
Hmm.
do events in a lot of either crypto focused conferences and events, but also just like cultural things, right? Whether it's Art Basel Miami or Mutech in Montreal, etc.
Hmm.
At these experiences, there's usually always an art component, um, and so an exhibit or some kind
Hmm.
of activation where people are able to collect art or see art. And there's like musical programming, so amazing DJs, live performances,
Hmm.
etc. And there's some kind of merging of those two things, some kind of performance thing. Um, So there's experiences. We have creative programs. So we run
Hmm.
a lot of grants and fellowships. And so we partner with a lot of other organizations that are looking to connect with artists because, on the top layer, our mission is pretty clear. But if you dive deep a little bit and you sort of ask yourself what's in this for, say the partners that we partner with, one of the
Hmm.
main things is that we really connect artists and new technology, right? And so we're able to
Got it.
connect artists to new platforms, new protocols, and find out new ways to essentially create more content or create that sort of missing content layer that Web3 seems to be, a little bit lacking right now. Let's just say,
Yep.
from the curatorial
We need
standpoint,
more vibes, better vibes, more
more
vibes.
vibes and
Yeah.
just good taste. I think
Yes.
there's a lot of really, and I think this is probably going to get. I might be kind of veering off a little bit, but I think this kind of gets to one of the big challenges that we have with Web3
Yep.
out there in the world, and it's this idea of like, you know, um, it's really it's almost like a PR thing, right? It's like people
Yep.
see Web3 as a rug or it's corny or whatever, and I think one of the things that we do is like our curation is so
Hmm.
like on
On
point
point. Hey,
that
there we go.
we're trying to show people that there's more to it than just like you know
Hmm.
PFPs, etc. Not that there's
Yep.
anything wrong with PFPs, but there's something deeper culturally around this that could be really interesting that they kind of are familiar with. Um, Going back to the ways that we activate, we've got events. We've
Yeah.
got these creative programs like fellowships and
Right.
grants that we use to like both empower artists, but also introduce new technologies and new ideas and protocols and concepts.
So
We do
important.
draw.
Everyone wants to be in creator economy. Everyone talks about creator economy, but how do you access them? You got to have the creators ready to go, right?
I mean, that's the thing that we're finding is our secret sauce, right? It's like we
Yep.
have number one, really amazing artists that have been OGs in the space for a long time. That's also bringing in emerging artists who see that we're in it for the long haul. We're not there just to
Yep.
kind of like a fly by night organization that's trying to like exploit people. We're here to like really support artists through our exhibits, our, grants, our drops, etc.,
Hmm.
our community. And so, you know, that's what we're able to do. We're able to connect these artists to this new technology, and they're creating new stuff with this new technology. And so everybody wins. Like the platform gets amazing
Hmm.
art and artists to try their work and to talk about what they're doing. The artists get empowered to, be funded to create new work, find new avenues to like sell their work or, find new
Yep.
ways to create new work through new tools. Um, and if we just keep doing that, keep multiplying that, that's just like that's how you change the industry really, and just
One
connecting
step in
people.
front of the other. Next thing you
Yeah,
know, you're at the peak. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I'm into that. I'm into that. Oh, and I realized we still have, I think, two more pillars, I think, right?
Yes, so
It's
drops is
experiences,
another.
creator programs. Yeah,
Yeah,
drops.
creative programs.
Okay.
We got drops, which is something that we're always working on with new artists. There's a lot of really interesting L2s that are approaching things in different ways.
Mm,
That is really, we see this kind of explosion right now with a lot of emerging and established artists working on those. So we partner a lot of them to drop, whether it's music NFTs or AV NFTs, so everything,
mhm.
music and visuals, or just straight up visual arts and generative art, etc. And then the fourth thing is just community, right? Like we really
Yeah.
trying to bring everyone together around all of these, three things that I mentioned before, finding new ways to connect them and empower them and really bring them together to, help each other and, learn new skills and just be better.
I love that. I love that. And I've seen it and I can attest, the refraction, you guys know what you're doing. I've been to different conferences, NFT NYC. I've been to some of your events and out in Brooklyn. When I was in Lisbon, went to what you guys did, NearCon. So these
Awesome.
guys know what they're talking about. So just, big plus 10 to that.
Thanks.
So so here's the thing. So you got all those different verticals, right?
Yeah.
And then how long has it been now? A couple
It's two
years?
years.
2 years. Yeah. So in those couple years, would love to hear a bit more about, kind of the biggest wins, and also not so big wins. So like, and then favorite
Right.
moments, right? Like what's been really like what are the big highlights for you, and then what are the big lessons, I guess, because that's always something I think there's so much to learn about that, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think highlights for us, is doing. I mean, I would say there's like, because there's so many pillars, each of those has its own
Yeah.
highlight. But I would say, you know, doing Miami Art Basel, is
Yeah.
really great. NFT NYC has always been really big for us. We've had like really big events,
Yeah.
and we were able to do things that felt, we're punching well above our weight in terms of production value. Um, you know, uh, the guest list is always on point. The right
Hmm.
people are there, and we're really showcasing how to, make what this sort of abstract technology. Because if you talk about
Yeah.
blockchain, people they're just kind of like, what is that? Make it a little bit more tangible and
Yeah.
community oriented through these events, right? That's the secret sauce as well about the events. It's like it's the opportunity to make things a lot more real for people, right? You're like, oh, okay, I can see the art in front of me. I can collect it, tapping my phone on like an IYK puck or something. Um, I can buy the merch through something like CrowdMuse. So there's like all these things
Yeah.
that are kind of making it tangible that we think are really important. We're obviously really bullish on culture being an on ramp into Web3 and just
Yeah.
technology in general. So the best way to make those things, sorry, I'm just going to
Oh,
shut this off.
oh, good.
I don't know how to turn that off. But the best way to make these things make people realize that these things are
Hmm.
valuable is showing it to them in real life, right? Like having that experience, which I think is really important. Um, so big wins are things like that. Our
Yeah.
creative grants have always been really something that we've been proud of. So when we first launched, we were able to unlock 100K of our treasury for creative grants. We had over
Nice.
150 applicants. We sponsored 24 or supported 24 different projects from around the world, everywhere from the African diaspora to South America to wherever, in Japan, etc. So we have been pretty active in that, and for me that's a huge win because we got to support these cool new projects, and that spun out new projects from there, and we were able to kind of like see that in and around the world and grow our network, which is really important for
And making
us.
that global impact, right? I think that's the really nice thing. Yeah.
I think that's a key for us too, because electronic music and digital art is a global thing, right? We've seen that through everything like a Boiler Room or Red Bull Music
Hmm.
Academy, etc. Right? Like it's not going anywhere, and I think we've been able through our ecosystem partnerships with like Mutech in Japan, Rainbow Disco
Hmm.
Club, Public Records in New York, what have you, to really be able to plug right into those like
Hmm.
underground scenes and get people excited about what we're doing and have that sort of established credibility already. In terms of challenges, I think being an arts focused DAO in a bear market has been pretty challenging.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think the fact that we're not only still around but thriving after all of that has let people realize that we're the real deal, right? And I
Yeah.
think also the idea of culture being a huge onboarding ramp and the need for creators to be involved in whatever technology you're building. I think people are finally coming around to that. I think in Europe they figured that out a long time ago. The idea of like
Yep.
culture being valued in a specific way, but I think in North America the conversations we're having now are a lot easier than they were 2 years ago because people are like,
Mm.
I see it, but I don't get it, no, no, no. But now they're like, oh fuck, okay, like how do we get your artists to work with us, and like how do we show you that what we're doing is really good for the creator economy, which is really important.
If I could just make a comment right there, I mean that
Yeah,
resonates so hard with me as well because I think it was a similar but different story when we started Myosin. Because I
yeah,
think we launched Feb 2022, so it was kind of like peak bull market as right before the FTX Luna stuff was about to happen, not much later. And I do remember early days, people are like, so what do you guys do? And we're like, we're a DAO, we're a marketing DAO, we have an agency, we have a product studio, and then you see their eyes just glaze over because I mean
yeah,
those are the days where you just launch a token and it moons and everyone just thinks it's easy, and then of course once the bear market hit, I think all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, this marketing thing, it really matters, like we got to
right,
do this. And now, I mean, yeah, it's the same thing. Like we're around and people get it now. But I think it's a similar, different story of right. Especially in Web3, I think we were so focused on infra and crypto and the
yeah,
tokens that we kind of lost sight of, well, for who, right? Well, number
yeah,
one, you got to market this thing. And number two, you got to have the people to market it to, which is the culture creators and the people who actually, are making this fun, right? Because if
mhm.
everything's just a casino all day, then not everyone always wants to be in the casino. Like, let's have some fun with it, right?
Yeah,
And I
that's a
think,
really good
yeah,
point. I think the bear market, there's that old adage that bear
yeah,
markets for builders, and I think like
yeah,
that noise kind of died down from everywhere else, so it kind of left anyone else who was standing as like, oh, okay, well, we kind of won in that sense, right? And I think what it helped us do, I mean, I think the big challenges too was sort of like you know, how do we, facing this market,
hmm,
start focusing, scaling properly, being really smart about our organization, making sure the right people are doing the right things at the right times, right? And I think
Mm,
that's a big thing. Like I think I saw it as well at Vice back in the day, the kind of like exponential growth, the explosion,
yeah.
and that sort of like it couldn't really keep up with it, and it's like, decisions were made that might not have been the best decision, but they had to be because the growth was just happening. So you got to make a choice, right? Now, because of the bear market, we were really able to focus a lot more on like, what are we really good at? What's the number
Hmm.
one thing? And like kind of block out a lot of, the advice or the sort of like so-called advice we're getting from a lot of people about what we should be doing. And I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, we're just like, okay, well, what are we really good at? What do we really want to do? What focuses our mission and what like, helps our community the most? That's what we should
Yeah.
stick with. And ever since we kind of like moved and stayed focused that way, we've seen so much more growth. We've seen so much more interest. Um, and yeah, it's great. It's great for everyone at the
Hell
end of the
yeah.
day. Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing. It's a curse and a blessing, right? But
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think this past 2 years, one and a half, 2 years, whatever you define it, like has it when your back's up against the wall, right? You kind of have to force yourself to really prioritize and figure out what are you and I'm really glad you guys are, on the other side, and it sounds like you guys are doing well. So really excited about that. Would love to dive deeper into this, right?
Mhm.
So, as we're talking about evolution and kind of focusing in on things, would love to better understand, how you guys leverage the community with the things you do, right? So,
Right.
like when you're curating these uh, events or these creative programs or whatever, these drops, right? How does that all work? Like, are you guys putting things out into the Discord, asking people like, "Hey, here's just does someone want to help?" Do you guys have a more dedicated roster? We just love to better understand that.
So the community, I would say, is the backbone of Refraction, mostly from, I'd say, either a curatorial standpoint, like the artists
Mm,
that are in our
yeah,
community are the artists that we like to exhibit, right? Because that's part
yeah,
of the benefit of being a Refraction member. It's like, hey, we obviously are bringing the best artists in, so we obviously want to show the best artists. In terms of, you know, how much the community gets involved, we regularly have calls for whether it's
mm,
volunteers or people that we're
yeah,
looking for to get involved in the actual event. But we've honed our team so much that we don't need to rely too much on the community to
yeah,
make an event happen other than just showing up. And to us, that's like a huge
yeah,
win. Like we want to just bring people together. We don't want people to have to work the whole time. We just want them to come and like
yeah.
see the amazing art, meet each other, connect, support each other. It's really great. Like I remember one of the first NFT NYC party we did at this really huge warehouse called Zero Space. We brought some of the most amazing emerging artists, but like OG artists from digital art together. We heard from a lot of them. It's like this is the first time we've all been together. We've been like curated
Mm,
together in museums before, or we've been on like Twitter Space, but like physically bringing people together and the
yeah.
collaborations and the community that happens out of that is such a huge um, has such a huge halo effect to what we're doing. So I would
Was
say
that the one 2 years ago, by the way, or is
it
that
was
pre?
2 years ago. Yeah, it was the bigger. Like we've had like one
I
we
think I
did with
went to that one
the
because
one
that's where
before
I
that.
got my lens hat that I wear everywhere.
Yes, that's
That
it. That's
really
it. Yeah,
worthy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Nice,
I love it.
nice.
That was a good one.
I
Yeah.
love it. Yes. So there's that side of it, and
Mm,
as I was mentioning before, getting the community. We're actively thinking about how do we get community involved in the curation side of it, right?
hmm.
Like whether we're running a joke race or something for people to sort of like submit art to be showcased at an event, etc.
Yeah.
So there's that, right? And I think what we're trying to do with our community is like rather than activate them to participate as much, we want them to participate in the things that I think artists want to participate in, which is being exhibited, getting fellowships and grants, learning new skills or new, creative tools, etc. So that's how we like to involve our community.
And it makes so much sense. Yeah, I get that. As you said before, and I can also attest to it. So I think most members, they just want to do the fun things, and inherently as a cultural DAO, you want to talk about culture, you want to curate, you want to show up for things, and even
Yeah.
that is really valuable because as we're talking about, somebody's got to bring these people together and actually help,
Mhm.
introduce them to these new concepts and have fun doing it.
Totally.
So with that, actually, would love to kind of zoom out, right, and kind of take this into broader, maybe more waxing poetic about consumer crypto, because
Sure.
well, I mean, let's double down on that, right? Like, what is consumer crypto? I think, I have my own take on it, but would love to kind of hear, how do you define consumer crypto? And then I guess the bigger question is like, what do you think is, I guess if you, because and I think I've talked to you about this before, but I have a lot of musician friends or artist friends who I think, as soon as it's so challenging because I think they recognize the challenge they're in because
Yeah.
some of them are full-time musicians, they're trying to become full-time musicians, and they're complaining about the streaming economy where Spotify, even if you get millions of streams, you won't get paid, I
Yeah.
don't even know, tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, maybe 1,000,
Yeah.
which isn't enough. And then you don't want to be a marketer or do all this merch, and touring is actually not even that profitable anymore. So it's challenging to hear them with all these frustrations, and then I try and explain, well, listen, with blockchain maybe you could, I try and there's such a resistance, I guess. So I don't know, I'm not asking you to solve this for the world, but how do you talk to people about this? How do you
I would.
explain this to people and help them on board? Yeah.
There's a couple of things. I would say I 100% agree. Like the problem with the blockchain or crypto, if in NFTs in general, it's sort of like there's an image problem, right? They've
Yeah.
all they hear is about the rugs and the scams, and they're like, "How
Yeah.
much does it cost for this JPEG?" Like, I don't get it. And I would say specifically with musicians, they've been if you just think about it from a musician's
Mm.
perspective, every time a new technology comes in, they're promised that it's going to help them. There's a promise that it's going to help them and their career, etc. But in the end, it just doesn't actually do that, right? It's like
Yeah.
CDs, lead to like piracy. Digital MP3s, similar thing.
Yeah.
Streaming, similar thing. It's like it sounds really cool and sexy, but then in the actual fact, it's like, okay, is blockchain going to be another way that people are just going to like fleece and rinse? But it's
Yeah.
unfortunate because that ownership side of it um, is a key to a lot of this, right? So I think one of the ways that we think about it a lot when we started was how do we make this really simple and
Hmm.
easy? How do we kind of extract ourselves from the language of the crypto space and Web3? Because I think that's also a part of it, right?
Yeah.
When you start talking about even just protocols and then like seed phrases and all these things, it's just like the average
Yeah.
musician's like, dude, like I don't even know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm still borrowing someone else's Netflix password. Like I don't even know. Like so so I think the simplification of it is like going to
Yeah.
be key. How do we make it really easy for people? And we're slowly moving towards that, right? I think for us as well, the IRL component is so important. How do we bring
Yeah.
people to experience these things, not just talk about it? Because you could just talk
Yeah.
about these things and like you start talking technical jargon and they start glazing over. But if you bring them to a refraction event and be like, yo, like everything that's been put on here has been put on by this like community, and the community owns this, right? It's as if you're like
Yeah.
you're co-owner in this festival. Like what does that mean? We're working steadily towards around like what does ownership mean, etc. This year is like it's a big focus for us, but at the end of the day, that's a real key thing for us. Is sort of like how do we show people, right?
Hmm.
um, and I think that trust we've been able to, because of the pedigree that we have with the kinds of people that are in the community who have their own respected audience and following, we've been able to kind of like, you know, circumnavigate some of those issues because they're like, okay,
Nice.
well, if Refraction's involved, if like, say, Tom Windish from Windish Agencies in Refraction, I trust him, or like, whoever, Malcolm or Greg or whatever, these guys all have done this stuff. We've always been for artists. I think we can trust these guys. So we've been able to kind of like um,
Hmm.
bypass all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's about trust. isn't it? Like
Yeah.
that's what it is at the end of it. You guys have the pedigree, you have, you know, these events, and I would love to like, hear a bit more about the events, right? Like as
Yeah.
you're going through the, I guess more from a adoption perspective, is like how do the convos go when people show up? Is it just they kind of they come to these things, you get to experience it, and then I guess as you said, you just explain like, listen, this is co-owned by the community, and
Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud here. Like, how does that typically go?
Yeah.
Have you had people who are very like anti who have been converted? I don't know. Or
I mean, not
yeah,
really, because we're also not super pushy about it, is the other thing,
mm,
right? Like, we're not
yeah,
trying to, like, you know, you know,
onboard the next billion users. Yeah,
well, not in a way that's like the hard kind of, you know,
yeah,
because that's how you push people away. You're just like, hey, come to this
yeah,
like sick Web3 crypto event. I mean, like most people in culture are kind of like, no, the way that we're doing it, it's almost you Trojan horse it through amazing curation, and you're able to just
hmm,
bring the right people in. Like the advantage of being in the electronic music space as well and in the digital art space is that people are already primed for something new and fresh and
yeah,
different. Right, because that's just kind of what it is. It might be different, like at an indie folk festival, but like we don't have
yeah,
that issue here, right? It's like
yeah,
people are already kind of like, I want to know what's new. I want to know what's
yeah,
fresh. And like there is already a strong sort of like by artists for artists grassroots
hmm,
core to that whole scene. So I think um, that's one way that's really easy to get people there. And I think one thing that we're actively thinking about this year is like, okay, well, how do we be a little bit more overt around what it means to join
mm,
Refraction and be part of Refraction? So we're talking already for Denver and beyond this year. We've got
yeah,
like 9 different events happening globally right now that are confirmed. Um, Having a strategy around, okay, well, what does our like onboarding look like now that things are a little bit easier for people to do it,
hmm,
right? Because I think that
yeah,
was the other challenge, right? We can only go as far as the technology can go, and if it's really
yeah,
annoying for someone to take their phone and like get a wallet and do all that stuff, but like there are so many ways for it to be easier now
yeah.
that we're kind of like ready to kind of
The
move in.
industry's catching up. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. They're finally catching up to the idea.
yeah.
So yeah,
When Refraction mobile app? I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, we're like the product side is something that we're talking a lot about.
Yeah.
There's again, like I can't say too much, but there's some
Yeah.
stuff in the works right now that's pretty interesting in terms of both empowering artists, onboarding creative tools from both like a
Mm,
creative tools perspective, but also like an infrastructure perspective. But yeah,
I'm
more
excited.
in Q4.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll offline about it after. I can
Yes.
share that with you.
Perfect. Well, that actually kind of ties into the next thing I want to ask, and then yeah, which is I guess everything we talked about, right? There's the experiences, there's the community, there's the drops, and there's the creator programs. But definitely, if you like had to boil it down, maybe it's like culture, community, and events is kind of the main essence of it. We'll love to kind of get your take on like the broader, I guess like Web3 music creator ecosystem, right? Because I there's and kind of what are the biggest, I guess, opportunities or that you see in this space? Because right now there's folks like SoundXY, right? So this idea of actually like owning the music on the
Yep.
blockchain is one element. Then there's tokenized loyalty. On our last
Mhm.
season, we had the Medallion FM team on, right? And they're talking, but they're working with really only like A tier, or
Yeah.
they're like real like bigger musicians, right? To prove out that model, and maybe one day. And then you guys are doing this awesome stuff. So kind of there is a burgeoning ecosystem, it feels like, but I guess
Yes.
it's like what is missing? What are the opportunities? What are the things that people should be building that hasn't been built yet? Um, and I don't know. Would just love to get your take on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right. I think, we at the beginning of the year, we were really thinking through, we do this sort of like yearly strategic plan where we're kind of going through
Yeah.
everything, looking at our areas of focus. And I think music and generative art are the two things that Refraction, number one, we can fully excel at because we have that roster of people and that
Yeah.
respect and the trust that we were talking about before. Um, and we see a ton of opportunity there. And again, I can't get too into sort of what
Yeah.
are the projects that we're building, but it's definitely in that sort of like, music, visual art, sort of streaming space. What does that look like, right? In and around like ownership and visual art and music. Um, it's hard because it does feel a little fractured right now in terms of like
Yeah.
the music space. I think there are, I've seen a few, whether it's conferences or organizations that have done a good job. Like obviously went through Seed Club with the Water and Music
Yeah.
crew, so love what they're always kind of up on the latest in that world. Um, but it's interesting to sort of see how this L2 boom is
Yeah.
going to play out with in the NFT music space. Like I've spoken with a few that that is a
Yeah.
real big interest for them, but it's kind of like, again, fractured is a little bit sort of my feeling of it. It's kind of like there's so many places where you can buy music. Where can you listen to it all? Is there a
Yep.
single way that you can tie all of this stuff together, right? Like I want to
Yep.
support the artist, but am I going to go to like four different platforms and
Yep.
protocols to do that? Like how do we kind of bring it all together is something that's kind of interesting, that would be interesting to solve.
Random idea.
Yeah.
We form SoundCloud DAO. We go buy SoundCloud and then base blockchain and all of it, and
There
then
you
boom, you're
go.
good.
There you go. I mean, there's some kind of like
Yeah.
unifying way to do it, and I don't know, if that's
Yeah.
about getting everyone together to like figure it out, have some kind of like whether it's like yeah, I don't know.
Universal protocol that ties all the music platform. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know, but that's something that would be really nice to have. Like as a music
Yeah.
fan and as a consumer, not seeing that around, like Refraction will bring you there. We'll bring the artists out. We've worked
Yeah.
with everyone on there with Sona, Sound,
Yeah.
Song Camp, all the S's.
Yeah.
And uh, yeah, but we worked with a lot of them, and we're happy to bring everyone together. So there is a vibe because everyone sees the value. The fact that there's so many, it's clear signal that people want something
Yeah.
different and new, and they're ready for change. Um, but how do we focus
Mm.
that is interesting. Refraction will go as far as we can to
Yeah.
bring people out to program it, but yeah, where does it go from there is the
You
question.
guys have to be the great unifier, unify the tribes, bring them
Yeah, in
together.
some sense,
There's a
like I
lot we can do.
feel that's what we do in terms of a community, right? We bring all these people who are fans of all these things out, so there is that potential for unification to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I mean, Denver and
We'll
South by
see.
that's going to be next, so we will have some conversations there.
There we go. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, listen, I do think I want to be mindful of time.
sure.
We are almost we're coming up on the hour, I guess. So would love to give you some space to talk about what's next on the horizon for Refraction.
Yeah,
What can people be on the lookout for 2024? How can people get involved? How should they get involved?
yeah.
Um, yeah, let the world know. Yeah.
Amazing. And wait, when does this come out? Do you know if it's going to be?
This one's gonna come out this week, actually. Yeah.
Oh, sick.
Yeah,
Nice. All right.
this will be very on the nose. Yeah.
Okay. So the things that I can plug right away in terms of like, if you want to catch Refraction, ETH Denver, we're going to be there.
Hmm.
Towns, HNT are real great supporters of ours. We're going to be doing something there. Ledger and Uniswap are involved. FWB is involved. It's going to be amazing at the Black Box. That's February 29th. March 3rd. I feel like I'm doing this. It's like at the end of like this comedy podcast where they're just like, catch me over at the Chuckle Factory. Uh,
Gotta
so
do it, man.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
good. South by Southwest with Luxo, March 13th. It's going to be the
Oh yeah.
kickoff of our partnership. I'm super excited about that. That's going to be at Lolo Wine Bar. Got some
Mm.
amazing curation for that. Really excited. NFT NYC at Public Records. If y'all don't know Public Records, check it out. It's
That's the
like the
jam.
mecca of music in Gowanus and Brooklyn. We're going to be doing a full takeover there. We're going to be at ETH Berlin. That's going to be sick.
Oh yeah.
ETH CC, we've got plans. FWB Fest, we got plans. Token 2049, DevCon, Basel. These are all things that are all confirmed. How do you get involved? One, if you're an artist, just hit us up, refractionfestival.com. You can apply. It doesn't cost anything, and that's really important to us. It doesn't cost anything to apply. Just apply, and in fact, if you get in, we give you refract tokens because for us, it's really important, the ownership piece, as I mentioned. Um, so yeah, if you're an artist, just apply to Refraction or get a Refract Pass. That's like the easiest way to support us. If you're a patron of the arts, if you're a collector, we have these Refract Passes that we have available. We're over 2/3 sold. So if you check us out on our website, you can check out the Refract Pass there, which gets you into all the different events and also gives you free airdrops of amazing art almost on the monthly, which is pretty exciting. Um, if you're a partner and you want to get involved, just hit me up, Raf at refractionfestival.com. Again, what we love to do is bring artists and technology together. So if you've got a protocol, if you've got a platform, if you've got something that you think artists would be really interested and can see the benefit from, reach out to me. We could either create, creative programs, get some partnerships going, sponsor an event, come out and
Mm-hmm.
host some of your community at one of our things, because it's always going to be great. So why not? Outside of that, yeah, I think that's
I
that's
love
pretty
it.
much it. Yeah.
That was comprehensive. I think you nailed it. So I think that pretty much covers the whole gamut. And
Awesome.
really excited. I'll be at East Denver. I'm going to be at.
Same.
It looks like now I'm going to be at ECC and a
Nice.
lot of the ones you just mentioned. I mean, these are top tier crypto events,
Yeah.
and everyone honestly should go. The vibes are impeccable. So I'm very excited.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. And it's great to
Yeah.
hear that every now and then we have a conversation and I mentioned some event and you're like, oh, I was actually there. I was like, oh shit, OT. Crazy.
Yeah, I should be taking like selfies at all these or one pull-up, right?
Yeah, yeah. Amazing.
Beautiful. Okay, so last thing is going to
Yeah.
be rapid fire questions, which are
Yeah.
always just fun. We do the same questions for every guest. So let's just dive into it. So I guess first one, pick one project, whether in Web3, AI, emerging tech, not including your own, that you're most bullish, excited about.
I will say that I'm a big fan of what CrowdMuse is doing right now. And
Mm,
in
yeah.
terms of, how they're sort of supporting the artist, how they're making that transparency and that chain sort of like sharing the value across that is really amazing. And I'm excited to kind of partner with them moving forward as well.
Can
Like,
you
design.
explain for folks who may not know a bit, just a bit about what CrowdMuse is?
So I don't want to like, I don't know if I'm going to do it justice,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
essentially, it's this idea of multiplayer contracts within
Hmm.
physical goods. So, for example, traditionally, if I wanted to print up a shirt or something, I have to
Hmm.
figure out who's the supplier, get the printer, na na na. But now through CrowdMuse's contracts, everyone in that chain can benefit from that, and there's different ways
Hmm.
that you can collaborate, etc., through that. So we're excited to figure out, because merch and physical goods are something that's really important to us,
Yep.
as a festival, as someone who throws events, shirts, totes, like even physical artwork. So we're excited to kind of partner with them and really figure out ways to do that both where everyone wins, but also it's done
Yes.
sustainably and consciously, which I think is also really important. They work with some really amazing
Hmm.
suppliers um, that are ethically sourced, etc. Amazing designers, and then just their brand is sick, and the people behind it are amazing. So if you don't know them, check it out.
Boom. Yeah, we'll drop a link in the show notes. But yeah,
Hell
we love
yeah!
CrowdMuse. That was a great description, honestly. I think you nailed it. So there you go. Next one here. One of my personal favorites always is biggest professional learning from the past 12 months.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's like, and it's hard in as a founder and in the startup world because you want to do
Yep.
everything, and you kind of feel like if you want to do if you want to do it right, you kind of have to do it yourself. But at the same
Yep.
time, it's like know your strengths and like lean on your team and kind of be transparent and open about like what you can and can't do. And you'd be surprised other people who will want to rise to the occasion
Mm,
and pick up the mantle for the things that, you know, you might be struggling with. So, for example, I mean, I'm not going to put any examples together, but I will say that there has been times where it's like, you know what it's like as a founder. You're kind of
Yeah.
literally doing everything. And at one point,
Yeah.
you're kind of like, wait a second, guys. I don't know if I can keep doing this or
Yeah.
even if I want to, or if I can like just, and then
Yeah.
having other people, if you have the right people on your team, you'd be surprised that people will be like, yo, I actually like doing this thing that you hate doing. I want to
Yeah.
step up, increase my role, and do that. So I
Boom.
think, it's like putting the right people together that are mission aligned and get it. I think that was like a big thing for us as we kind of like
Mm.
figured out our structure a little bit
Yeah.
more, putting the right people in the right place, and everyone who's got that DIY mentality. Because I think early
Yes.
on, I think you'll probably recognize that too. Early on in Web3, everyone was kind of just like aping in because they're just like, oh, this is the new way
Yeah.
to like make money or get a job. But not everyone has that kind of like DIY mentality.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we really focused our team in and around that, it like really paid dividends
Which
for
was
us.
the other nice thing about the bear market, because a lot,
Yeah,
a lot of the people who were just there for the money or for a job, and they didn't really have that entrepreneurial mindset. A lot of
yeah,
them left, and it made, at least for us, and I'm sure you as well, like picking out the people, the ones who stayed. You're like, great, so you actually care about this.
yeah.
Like
You're
you really
believers,
want to,
true believers, right? Like
true
you're in it to
believers.
win it. Like let's go for
Yeah.
sure.
And it's
Yeah,
actually interesting. That lesson, I think, is probably one of the more common ones I've heard, and
mm,
for a good reason, right? I think and it's actually something. If someone asked me that, it would probably be the same thing, because I think for
yeah,
myself and Simon, my co-founder, right? Like and Sean, right, our third, but like all of us have had to deal with that challenge
yeah.
all the time. Is like you want to do the thing, you think you're the best, but letting go of those reins and delegating is
There's only so
that's
many
the
hours you have in the
yeah.
day, too, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
we just gotta delegate and trust and empower.
It's hard,
Um,
but yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's hard. Uh, cool. So, and then two more here. So this next one's just fun. Let's say you had $1 million just kind of airdropped into your wallet, USDC, or wired to your bank account, whatever. You
yeah,
can't work on Refraction. It can
right.
continue on without you. What would you do?
Yeah, I think something that we're not really talking about in refraction as much, and maybe it'll come back up is like a physical space, right? Like,
Mm,
how do you start something that is like almost the next iteration of refraction in terms of like a place that can house some of these communities, can have these
hmm.
events. I mean, $1 million doesn't really get you much these days, anyways. But like,
Yeah, yeah,
I would say, physical spaces are really interesting for me, and also just like I'm die hard. Like, how do we give back to this creative community, and how do we empower them, and whether that's a a grant fellowship or a residency somewhere, like
yeah.
starting something up like that could be really really interesting.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I mean, who knows? I might be already working on this stuff, so I don't know.
You never know. I mean, there's always opportunity. I think in the next couple years, we're going to be in an incredibly better, or I think we're all going to do well. And I think in the next couple years, that opportunity will certainly present itself. So
Yeah,
let's make it a reality.
I hear you.
And then last one here. This one's just fun, shits and giggles. Craziest predictions for Web3 AI emerging tech as a whole by end of year this year. Uh,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I don't know if I have a crazy prediction, but I do know that AI is gonna change the game for better or for worse in a lot of different
yeah,
ways. I'm really interested in the creator response to that and how
yeah.
you know yeah, that's going to be really really interesting, right? Because I think if I think about all the traditional
Hmm.
um create jobs or like roles for people, how AI is going to change all of that. Um, it's it's going to be interesting. I still have faith. I don't think it's going to be this dystopian fucking Terminator world or
Yeah,
anything. I think everyone who is just needs to, number one, like learn the tools and use the tools as they are as
yeah,
tools, right? I think a lot of people said similar things about different kinds of technology through the
Yep.
years. Like, oh, this is gonna
The example they always use is ATMs, which is when ATMs were
right,
invented, because it's
right,
literally ATM stands for automated teller machine. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
when
yeah,
ATMs came out in the 70s, they're like, oh, all the bank tellers are going to go extinct. And
right,
actually, I think there are now more bank tellers because
right,
basically when you had the ATMs, it made people want to go to banks more, I guess. But it was the
right,
complete opposite, basically, of what everyone had predicted. So
right.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Like I'm not scared per se, but I'm really interested to sort of see what
Yeah.
this means. And I know there's a big conversation around decentralized AI right now and
Yep.
like how does our world kind of mesh, back into that. And I think, as an arts and culture organization, like, we can't help but think about it. And it's something that's definitely on our radar.
Just a quick hot take. I think with AI, like creating infinite content, there's gonna be a lot of mediocre content. So I
Yeah.
think if anything, having someone like Refraction to be the culture curators,
Yes.
curation is gonna come back into the picture as it's gonna be the only thing that matters, you know?
Yeah. You know what? I had a really good conversation in Istanbul with Rafa, the builder, around this,
Mm,
and he made a
yeah,
really good point around that. But I think you're right. If there is I don't know if it's a crazy prediction, but there's always a pendulum swing the other way. So
yeah,
like the more you know AI, that kind of aesthetic, and that's kind of becomes familiar. Everybody already knows like a mid journey
yeah,
thing and all that stuff. There's going
yeah.
to be a swing the other way. Like people need something like refraction where it's like human curation and real
Yep.
like interesting out of the box thinking is going to be more important than ever. So I do agree with that. And
Yep.
I don't think it's a crazy prediction. I just think that's
Yep.
fact.
And you know, or two other, I'm just like, now my brain's just humming, right? So sorry, we're just dragging this on, but this is
Yeah,
really
yeah,
fun.
yeah. No, I'm happy to keep,
Is
keep jamming.
Yeah, it's two very clear examples, watches and vinyl records.
All
Uh,
right.
we don't need watches
Yeah.
functionally, but people enjoy wearing them because it's the beauty of having the mechanical. There you go. We like a good watch gang. Uh, hashtag watch gang. Um, but yeah, I think now that things are so digital, it's kind of like the return to the analog. And I think the
Yes.
crazy thing is, I don't know if you saw this, but there's vinyl records are at the highest demand and production volume
It's
like
crazy.
ever.
Yeah.
Well, since like the decline basically, but right,
Yeah.
like because streaming is so prevalent, because
Right.
music is so easily accessible, now vinyl has become just like with
People want
watches, something that
that
people value.
kind of, yeah, that physical thing to treasure. Again, it's like
Yeah,
experiences, right? Like,
yeah,
there's like countless studies around how experience is the new luxury, let's say, right?
hmm,
Because, you know, things that you can, touch and feel and kind of like live is, I
yeah,
think, never going to go out of style. In fact, it might be even more important, especially like, we're way post pandemic now, but like, we were cooped up for so long living in these
yeah,
digital worlds, in these
hmm,
metaverses. Now that we're out, we're like, we want to like live and breathe and connect and like, touch
yeah,
each other and like dance and like be a community. And I think that's something that is a primal thing that, again, also won't go out of style. So we're excited to kind of like bring that into this world and beyond.
exactly. And then the last thing, restaurants, right? People thought,
Yeah.
restaurants. There are more people going to restaurants than ever before, more people traveling. So yes,
Yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
think man, we're geniuses, aren't we? No, okay. But no, it makes sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, really excited. I think you guys are already doing a great job, and I think you guys will continue to do a great job. And
Thanks,
excited
man.
for all the fun stuff we'll do together, and it's going to be a good
Yes.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Most definitely.
be a good
Really
time.
stoked. Awesome.
Cool. So I think with that, that concludes the interview. So unless there's anything else, oh, actually, last thing is if you could please just where can people find you, basically? So just all the links at handles so people can follow and keep in the loop. You already kind of did it before, but just like
Yeah, on Twitter we're
yeah.
Refraction DAO. It's like at Refraction
Mm,
DAO. I'm at Rafael Katigbak. You can find me as Raf Katz. I'm on Discord. The website refractionfestival.com. Get ready for like a re up of that. That's going to be pretty sick. A new branding and a new kind of like visual experience going to be happening in and around that. Oh yeah, Instagram. We're Refraction Festival on Instagram.
mm.
Yeah, check us out.
Hell yeah, it's all
So
coming.
Join the
Um,
community. Let's go.
join the community and
Yeah.
let's go vibe out IRL,
Yeah.
the new luxury.
Yeah. See you in
Cool.
Denver and beyond.
I'll see you in Denver. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. All
Amazing.
right. I think with that, I'm going to say goodbye and
Yes.
I'll see you online. And thank you for being
Yes.
here. And I'll talk to you again soon. All right.
100%. Thanks, Blake. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks so much, Raf. I'll
Bye
talk to
bye.
you soon. All right. Ciao, ciao. We hope you enjoyed that episode of Netcetera. If you'd like to support us, please subscribe, give us a like, and tune in anywhere you get your podcasts. Thank you so much.